Hey, welcome back World Entertainment, and this is the review for Picard Season 3, Episode 4. This episode is called No Win Scenario, which is funny because I'm pretty sure almost every Star Trek series has had that title. More better known to Star Trek fans, of course, as the Kobayashi Maru, but I'm pretty sure every series of Star Trek has had the no-win scenario title. So as usual, I'll give a quick non-spoiler review and then we'll get into the full spoilers. So, the end of last week's episode, the Titan was badly damaged and is basically dead in the water, sinking into the nebula. So we pick up right from there, on the bridge with Riker trying to do everything or come up with every idea to try and get the Titan out of the nebula. All their systems are shutting down, and every time they try and boost up the engines, it's draining the power quicker. Picard is trying to get to know Jack a bit, in what they believe would be their final hours, seeing as the ship is going down basically. And Seven is still on the hunt for what we know showed up in the last episode, the Changeling. And no matter what they're doing, they really can't figure out any way to get the ship right again, basically. Because as I said, no matter what they're doing, especially if they try and rev up the warp nacelles, it's just draining the power more. And they keep getting hit by the electrical, biological waves. Remember that now. We do get a bit of a heart-to-heart with Riker and Picard, kind of fixing, well, maybe not fixing, but recognizing what the response was last week, the argument. When Riker told Picard, like, well done, you killed us all, basically. And they come up with a plan to try and get out there. Riker's not very optimistic about it, but in the end goes for it. We find out what Shaw's beef is with Picard as well. And we find something a bit, not much, but a bit more about Vadic, our villain of the piece. So that's going to be it for the non-spoiler, because this episode you kind of have to go into spoiler. No Raffi this episode, which means no Worf, but well, at least we didn't really get Raffi. So I would give this episode, I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Yeah, it's a high number, but it felt like a real Star Trek episode. Again, the only issue is language. Yes, this is one of two episodes that has an F-bomb in it. To be honest, it happens so quickly you barely notice it, but unfortunately it is there and it is out of place. Some of the other bit of language that's in it, like saying dipshit and stuff like that, kind of fits the scenes, oddly enough, but it's still out of place. But it's, yeah, I guess it is what it is at this stage. But yeah, I'd give this episode a 8.5 out of 10. So with that, I'm going to get into the spoilers. So be ready. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Full spoilers. Right, so the episode starts off 5 years ago in the past. Picard's at 10 forward. He's about to have his lunch, fish and chips, and a bunch of I don't want to say cadets because they're in uniforms, but they could be cadets. I think they are cadets from the academy, and kind of want to get stories from Picard. They've read his book, but they want to hear it from him himself. And he one of the main pieces of information he's giving them is you're only as good as your crew around you, that together there's nothing you can't get past and through. And then it jumps to the present day, and he's looking out the window at basically what's coming, the nebula, and this when we go to the bridge, and Rikers trying to come up with ideas to try and get power systems back online, but nothing they're doing is working, and they keep getting hit by the electrical waves, which are electrical and biological. And they're just saying, like, we're sinking, the ship is basically bleeding, and basically there's nothing left we can do. We're going down, that's it. We've got about 3 hours of life support left. So Riker diverts all power to life support, gets the crew into certain areas of the ship together, and just shuts the rest of the ship down. He then goes to see Picard, and this is when he has the kind of heart-to-heart with Picard over the way he reacted, and the two of them kind of reacted on the bridge. And Picard's trying to apologize, and Riker says, you're right. And what he's saying you're right about wasn't about attacking the Shrike. It was about Picard telling Riker he understands that he's got the great fear of loss because of the death of his son. But Riker tells him he's right and convinces Picard to go and spend the last few of his hours with Jack. So Seven is looking for the changeling. So she goes to Riker and tells him that they've got a changeling on board. She finds the transporter officer dead, that the changeling was imitating. But they discover he's been dead before Picard and Riker even came to the ship to try and find Jack Crusher. So there's more to the story with the changelings than just Jack. And Riker wants to keep it quiet that there's a changeling on board. And Seven is confused by this, and he says, look, morale is at an all-time low as it is. And he says to her, like, I'm not saying stop looking for it, just let's keep it quiet. So she's going to keep looking. So Picard goes to speak with Jack. When we meet, or when we go to sickbay where Jack is, as the scene jumps into sickbay, you hear a countdown from 7. It goes not 7 of 9, the number 7, and it's probably 7, 7, 6, 5, 4. And every time she hits 1, those waves hit her, and so she's obviously calculating it up. Jean-Luc comes in and asks, can he speak with Jack? And of course she says of course she can, and he basically wants to get to know him with the last few hours of their time. Seven goes to Shaw to inform him that there's a changeling on board, and he explains to her, there's ways you can catch them out. Say, like, if they know something they shouldn't know, or they don't know something they should know, And then he gives her a big compliment and basically it was, oh yeah, so that's the type of thing you wouldn't say or that's the type of thing you would say if you were a changeling. You say, exactly, you're getting it. So he explains to Seven that they live in buckets, that she has to find its bucket because then they can scan the residue that it leaves in the bucket. And then the sensors will be able to detect where it is. And when she looks up the bucket, I think Shaw hands her the pad to see what these buckets look like. It's Odo's bucket. It's a picture of Odo's bucket with Odo down in the corner. So there's a nice little Easter egg there for Odo. Picard and Jack go to the holodeck and have a drink. People will probably wonder why the hell, if Rikers shut everything down, non-essential, why is the holodeck operating? Jack does ask that question. Picard explains it actually runs off its own separate power cell for exact scenarios like this, that if things are looking bleak, the crew can go to a holodeck and basically kind of get rid of the anxiety of what's coming, because the fear of death, basically, I guess. And of course, being Irish, what are they drinking there? Jameson whiskey. But Seven goes back to quarters. I'm not sure if it's her quarters or not. I doubt it. And the only reason I say that is because in that quarters is that game she was always playing with Tuvok and Voyager. The weird little stick things. You put them together, the Vulcan game, and it changes into the ball, sphere type thing. And she discovers the bucket behind a window, or not a window, a screen over a light. When we go to the Shrike, we actually go to the Shrike this episode, and Vadic, this is weird, she goes to this kind of plate with water in it. She seems to have, like, it's either a Klingon knife, it looks like a Klingon knife, or a Riemann knife. It's very similar to the one Shinzon had. But she cuts her hand off, but the hand mutates the same way we've seen this new effect that they have for the changelings, and it forms like a Scully type face that's giving her commands, telling her, she's explaining, the Titan basically got away, that it's in the nebula, it's dead in the water, and whoever this thing, which, by the way, it's like, is she a changeling or isn't she? Because the hand has gone into that form. But the thing tells her to follow, get in there and get them. And she doesn't want to do it because it's basically a death sentence, and it tells her, well, if you don't, we'll kill you, basically. And then says, like, everything's expendable, your ship's expendable. She doesn't want to go into the nebula because of her payload. And this thing tells her, well, you're expendable, your ship is expendable, and your crew is expendable, so get the hell in there and get them. So she does. She is willing to go. Then we're back with Jack and Picard, and Jack is basically like, look, thanks for this, blah blah blah, but it's not what I needed. It seems to be more what you need, or it's you found what you wanted in life, I've kind of found what I want, blah blah blah. This whole thing's not for me, and I don't need it. And Picard says, maybe I'm the one who needs it, basically. And then Seven is walking down the corridor with the bucket, and she contacts sick bay and says she needs assistance with scanning a bucket while two crew members pass her. And one of them's kind of looking back, and all of a sudden, that one pulls out a phaser, shoots, and kills the other officer that they're walking with. Turns around, Seven shoots his arm off. The arm grows back, and then Seven just starts shooting it as it's running towards her, and it liquefies into its normal form and goes up into like a duct or something in bulkhead in the ship. It's a weird new effect they have with the changelings, because it used to be like goldy, liquidy form. It's now kind of, it's like red and white. There's more texture and stuff to it. It's a weird effect. It's almost like a muscle kind of effect. It's strange. Then we're back in the holodeck, and a lot of the crew start coming into the holodeck, and Picard invites them all in, and out of nowhere Shaw arrives in, and he's being a bit of a dick, and he's sitting down, and Picard has just told Jack a story about him and Beverly's first husband, Picard's best friend, Jack Crusher, about the story of when the two of them were stranded in a shuttle with no sensors, no visibility, no power, and managed to get back to the Stargazer. And Shaw comes in and starts going, I've been in these type of scenarios too, blah blah blah. And you find out why he hates Picard. And he goes, do you know how I first met your old man? He says to young Jack Crusher, who, by the way, does ask Picard, do you not think it's weird that she gave me the first husband's name, not yours? And Picard says, to be honest, I'd have given you his name as well, because they were best friends. But Shaw gives a stardation, but you see the angst on Picard's face, and Jack doesn't know. He goes, oh, come on, kid. Everybody knows the Battle of Wolf 359. So he was an engineer. Shaw was an engineer on a starship. He does say the name of the ship. I can't remember. Something like the Castillo or something like that. And him and I can't remember how many friends he says of his ran down to the lower decks to escape pods, but there was only one escape pod left, and he didn't want to abandon any of his friends. And all of a sudden, I think it was either a lieutenant commander or commander, maybe just a lieutenant, showed up, and he says she just started pointing at all different ones, saying you, and she pointed at him, and he's breaking down on why did she point at me. And it was basically, you 10 have been chosen to get into the escape pod. The escape pod only had 10 seats, and he didn't want to go, and they were ordered to go. And then he says to Jack, do you know where your old man was during all this time? And says he was on the Borg cube and all this type of stuff, and he's kind of ripping it in. And then says he's the most dangerous Borg there ever was, that the Borg gave him a goddamn name, Locutus. And Jack kind of says, okay, that's enough. And Picard says, no, it's okay, I understand. And he leaves, and Jack runs after him, and Beverly catches up and says the nebula isn't a nebula, it's those waves that's happening are contractions. This thing's giving birth. And they realise the energy, they could ride one of the energy waves. So they go to Riker and they try and convince Riker. He's kind of against it, because it's basically, we'd be flying blind. There's an asteroid field to try and get through. And if it doesn't work, if we drop out of the wave, that's it, we're toast. Because that'd be every last bit of our power gone. But they convince him, Picard and Beverly pretty much convinced Will, saying, like, this is what we've always kind of done, basically. Like, let's get out there and do what we do best. So Rikers like, yeah, okay. He comes up with a bit of an idea, but he comes up with the plan that the newer engines have a fail-safe, that they'd have to release this vent to be able to suck in the power from the energy wave that would feed into the warp core and give them power, and that would allow them also to last in the wave. And the only person aboard the ship who could do that is Shaw. So they basically go down and say, look, we need you to hotwire it. And there's a funny moment because Shaw said he's just a dipshit from Chicago in the holodeck when he's talking about Locutus and stuff. He goes, but what would I know? I'm just a dipshit from Chicago. So Seven and Picard go down to say to Shaw, like, look, we need your help. And Picard goes, I know I'm the last person you want to see and stuff, but we need someone with your skills, blah blah blah. And he goes, even for some dipshit from Chicago. And Shaw's just like, oh, yeah, good one. So Shaw and Seven go and they're working on opening this vent up, and Shaw goes, this would be the perfect opportunity for the changing to strike, because to stop us doing this would guarantee that the warping cells don't work. And they realise this is probably when a changeling is going to come and attack them. So Seven contacts Riker. We don't hear what she says to him. We just see him coming out of or walking away from the helm saying, understood, Seven. Hits the thing. So they're getting ready. He gives Picard command because he's the only one who's ever flown blind. So we get the classic Jean-Luc sitting down telling everyone good luck and stuff, and then looks straight up and does the whole finger point and engage. Now there's a ton of debris in front of them as well, so they need Jack to read out where all the asteroids are. Then we're back with Shaw and Seven, and Shaw, they have 2 minutes. It's 3 minutes till the wave hits. They have 2 minutes to open these vents. And Shaw's like, okay, I got one of the vents open. It's going to take a few minutes to open the next one. Seven, you should go and try and make sure you can open that thing. So she's like, sure. Walks off, and all of a sudden LaForge comes in. Lieutenant LaForge, whose first name I keep forgetting. She walks in and says, oh, how can I help? And Shaw's looking at her and goes, why are you here? And she's, oh, Captain Riker told me to come down and give you a hand. And he's like, okay, so hand me that plasma torch. And she's handing it down to Shaw, and she starts asking the question. Goes, so if only one of the vents is open, the warp core won't work, right? And he's like, yeah, why? And she just starts smiling, and all of a sudden Seven goes, yeah, stand up and turn around. And she's like, what are you doing here? She's like, Captain Riker told me to come down and give his hand. And Seven's like, no. And she's like, yeah, it's me. Like, what are you doing? And Seven goes, well, it's strange that Captain Riker would send you here, because I specifically told him not to send anyone down here. So she's been caught out, and she's like, but it's me, Commander. And she goes, Commander what? And she says, Hansen. And she shoots her, and I think kills her, but she doesn't fully change back. She kind of liquefies a bit, hits the ground, but her eyes have gone this weird colour. And Shaw's like, how the hell did you figure it out? And she's like, because she always calls me Commander Seven out of respect. And she chose to, out of respect in Shaw's face, because he demands her being called Seven and or Hansen. She's like, okay. So the wave comes. They hitch the ride on the wave. They're escaping. It's working. They had to shut down everything, including life support. So the ship was totally dead. The wave gets it. They hit the wave. They're riding the wave. All of a sudden, the Shrike is out in front of them. Right, the ship is now getting powered back up because they're sucking the energy in, which is what the vents were for. Riker tells the helm, grab an asteroid with the rear tractor beam, which they do. Tells them to pull up and release it, and they throw the asteroid at the Shrike, damaging the Shrike and pushing it out of the way, and they get out of there. And then we see what what the nebula gave birth to, and they're like, it's very reminiscent to Encounter at Farpoint. They're like space jellyfish. His space babies. Goddamn space babies. And then we have Jack looking around the bridge and seeing everyone hugging each other and shaking hands, and remember Picard saying, it's about being connected with people. Picard's looking at Jack and he's hearing his words. And then we go back to that moment in 10 Forward, the bar 10 Forward, where Picard's talking to the cadets. And one of the people at the bar, just dressed normally, asks them the question of, okay, so you had all this out in space, what about a real family? And it's Jack. And obviously Picard didn't realise at the time, and says Starfleet's the only family he's ever needed. And of course realises who he was saying it to now on the bridge and is looking at him. Then we go to Riker sitting in he was recording, I forgot to say, Riker was going to record a message to Deanna saying basically, we've lost hope and we're done, but paused it. He couldn't figure out what to say, so we have him here talking, saying he's ready now for coming back, and thought leaving would make things better, to give them a break and stuff. And he's talking to Deanna, and she's talking back saying it's not your fault and all this stuff, and then just looks at him and says, are you and Jean-Luc in trouble? And he's like, I don't know yet. Then we go to Jack, and he starts having a vision again, where I can't make out what the voices are saying. It's very muddled and whispery. I can't make out what it's saying. I suppose it could turn on subtitles, but meh. But there's all this kind of red vine type stuff growing on the wall behind him, and he's slapping himself in the face. And then you're seeing visions of like lots of red smoke and what looks like a nuclear blast. You can see faintly buildings, and then we see that red door again, and that's where it ends. He slaps himself, opens his eyes, all those visions are gone, and that's the end of the episode. So that's episode 8. Sorry, it's not episode 8. It's episode 4. Jesus, I hope it's not episode 8. It's episode 4 of Picard. So, as I said, I'd give this a 8.5 out of 10. No Raffi in this one, or Worf, but we do get a tiny bit of Deanna again. So I'm going to assume episode 5, which from what I hear, is where the show really takes off. I'm going to assume this is when we get more of the OG cast together. So yeah, so that's it for this episode. No win scenario. So with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.